I would never talk to that character because she doesn't fulfill physically.
Dustin Hoffman, a name that once redefined the very idea of a Hollywood star, did not rise to the top through the classic good looks of a matinee idol, but through something else, an almost obsessive authenticity in his performances. From the awkward young man in The Graduate to the brilliant Raymond Babbitt in Rain Man, Hoffman turned every role into a slice of real life, convincing audiences they were witnessing a true human being rather than a fictional character. Yet behind the stage lights and thunderous applause, Hoffman's life has been filled with contradictions. He became a symbol of innovation in acting, but also the center of scandals that shattered his image. Between prestigious Oscars, unforgettable roles, and years overshadowed by controversy, a complex portrait emerges, one both celebrated and scrutinized. Hoffman's story is not merely about the journey from obscurity to legend. It is also a reminder that fame and darkness often walk side by side. To truly understand the man hidden beneath the glittering facade, we must delve into his artistic triumphs, his private turmoil, and the hidden corners of one of the greatest actors of the 20th century. Early life. Dustin Lee Hoffman was born on August 8, 1937 in Los Angeles, into a Jewish immigrant family of Ukrainian origin. His father, Harry Hoffman, once worked as a prop man at Columbia Pictures, but the harsh realities of the Great Depression cost him that job, forcing him to switch to selling furniture to support the family. His mother, Lillian, was a simple homemaker, but carried within her a passion for literature and the arts. Though not wealthy, she always encouraged her son to nurture his imagination and to see art as a spiritual refuge. Even so, Dustin's childhood was marked by financial instability, frequent moves, and a constant sense of insecurity. Within the family, Dustin often felt lesser compared to his older brother Ron, a brilliant student who would later succeed in law. In contrast, Dustin was a slow developer. He didn't begin speaking until the age of 3, was small in stature, and entered adolescence burdened with braces and severe acne. For him, Los Angeles High School was little more than a string of disappointments. With average grades, poor concentration, and no talent in any subject, Hoffman once mocked himself as a kid with no abilities at all, relying only on clownish antics and teasing teachers to attract a shred of attention, a mask to hide his feelings of inadequacy. His family hoped Dustin would follow a safe and respectable path, becoming a pianist, a profession highly regarded within the Jewish community. He obeyed, enrolling at Santa Monica College to study music, only to realize that he lacked the technical skill to go far. When the dream of piano faded, Hoffman sank into despair. It was during this uncertain time that he signed up for an acting class, initially just because he had heard it was an easy course, impossible to fail. Yet this coincidence opened an entirely new horizon. On stage, for the first time, Hoffman discovered a space where he could transform into anyone, a place where he felt heard and accepted. In 1958, with only $50 in his pocket and weighed down by anxiety, Hoffman left Los Angeles for New York, the land of Broadway. He rented a cramped, damp apartment with Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall, 3 unknown young men scraping together pennies while chasing the same dream. By day, Hoffman worked odd jobs, waiting tables, selling toys at Macy's, typing for hire, even working in a psychiatric hospital just to afford food. By night, he immersed himself in acting classes at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg. There, Hoffman was first introduced to and deeply absorbed the philosophy of method acting, becoming the character through real emotions, living entirely inside the role. This choice would become the cornerstone of his career. The early years in New York were harsh and lonely, but they forged Hoffman's resilience. He faced constant rejection at auditions, dismissed as too ordinary in appearance to ever be a Hollywood leading man. Yet instead of giving up, he stubbornly set out to prove that an actor's worth did not lie in height or good looks, but in the ability to capture truth and stir emotions in an audience. Out of the shadows of failure, insecurity, and self-doubt, the seed of a legend quietly began to sprout. A Dustin Hoffman determined to be recognized, not for appearances, but for absolute honesty in every performance. Early career. Dustin Hoffman entered cinema with a role that defied every convention of its time. In The Graduate, 1967, director Mike Nichols made the bold choice of casting Hoffman, then 29 years old and far from the leading man type, as Benjamin Braddock, a recent college graduate adrift and bewildered at life's crossroads. It was precisely Hoffman's hesitation, vulnerability, and natural awkwardness that turned the character into an emblem of an entire generation. The Graduate instantly became a cultural phenomenon, the highest-grossing film of 1967, and earned Hoffman his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. The film's impact went far beyond commercial success. It introduced a wholly new archetype for the male lead, not the flawless figures of Paul Newman or Cary Grant, but men burdened with insecurity, identity crises, and emotional fragility. Hoffman laid the foundation for this image, inspiring the generation of Pacino, De Niro, and Nicholson that followed. 2 years later, Hoffman confirmed his commitment to unconventional roles with Midnight Cowboy, 1969, where he embodied Ratso Rizzo, a sickly, destitute drifter surviving on society's margins. To prepare, he observed and studied the lives of the homeless up close. His immersion blurred the line between actor and character, earning him his second Oscar nomination in just 2 short years. The 1970s became Hoffman's crucible, a decade where he relentlessly tested himself and proved his limitless versatility. Having already shocked Hollywood with The Graduate and Midnight Cowboy, he no longer wanted to be remembered merely as a breakthrough face. He was determined to become a true artist of depth. To do so, he sought out difficult, even extreme roles that demanded complete immersion, treating acting not as a job, but as a way of living inside another person's skin. In Little Big Man, 1970, Hoffman carried the weight of an entire lifetime on screen, portraying Jack Crabb from boyhood among the Cheyenne to a centenarian recounting his past. The role tested him both physically and emotionally, requiring mastery of every detail, from gait and gaze to the quiver of an old man's voice. The film, a satirical epic of American history, found its anchor in Hoffman, who guided audiences through the absurdity and tragedy of an era. Just a year later, he pivoted again in Straw Dogs, 1971. His David Sumner, a timid intellectual, slowly mutated under pressure into a man driven to violence, exposing the darker instincts of survival. Hoffman conveyed the transformation not only through dialogue, but with subtle shifts in gestures and expression, drawing viewers into the disturbing passage from helplessness to fury. The film sparked fierce debate about violence and morality, but also cemented Hoffman's ability to probe the most dangerous edges of the human psyche. In Papillon, 1973, opposite Steve McQueen, Hoffman shaped the story of escape from the brutal French penal colonies. While McQueen embodied raw strength and defiance, Hoffman went in the opposite direction. His Louis Daga was frail, dependent, and fearful. Yet that very weakness added a human counterweight, transforming the escape into more than a tale of brute force. It became a story of friendship and loyalty. Critics praised the silent dialogue between the two actors, their contrasting energies forging the chemistry that elevated Papillon into classic status. Hoffman pressed further with Lenny, 1974, proving he could all but erase himself within a role. As comedian Lenny Bruce, notorious for his obscenity and biting social satire, Hoffman didn't just mimic mannerisms, he embodied the man's pain and unraveling. He studied recordings, dissected gestures, and when he stepped on stage, many felt it was Bruce himself resurrected, not Hoffman in costume. This near-total transformation brought him yet another Oscar nomination, validating his arduous but artistic path. Then came All the President's Men, 1976, which took Hoffman to another pinnacle. Alongside Robert Redford, he recreated journalists Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward as they unraveled the Watergate scandal. Where Redford's Woodward was calm and methodical, Hoffman's Bernstein was restless, energetic, and tense, always on edge to catch the next thread of truth. Many scenes came alive through improvisation, lines invented on set and kept by director Alan J. Pakula for their authenticity. Hoffman's portrayal of Bernstein captured the era when journalism was hailed as the fourth estate, and the film proved that acting could illuminate history as much as entertain. Each role was not just an artistic triumph, but a continuation of the journey Hoffman had begun with The Graduate, dismantling Hollywood's rigid mold of the leading man, replacing it with figures of complexity, contradiction, and humanity. Characters who felt less like myths and more like real people. Career success. After navigating the experimental 1970s, Dustin Hoffman entered his peak with a string of roles that won both critical acclaim and the hearts of audiences worldwide. Kramer vs. Kramer, 1979, was the first shining milestone. As Ted Kramer, a work-obsessed man suddenly abandoned by his wife and forced to learn fatherhood, Hoffman poured both personal experience and artistic intuition into the smallest details. The clumsy attempts at making breakfast for his son, the despair in his eyes during the custody trial. The film became a phenomenon, winning 5 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Hoffman. Yet the behind-the-scenes methods drew controversy. He shocked Meryl Streep by slapping her in a scene to elicit a raw reaction, and even whispered the name of her recently deceased partner, John Cazale, to provoke tears. These methods were later criticized as ethically questionable, though the artistic outcome was undeniable. Determined not to be confined to one type of role, Hoffman embraced another challenge in Tootsie, 1982. Playing Michael Dorsey, a struggling actor who disguises himself as Dorothy Michaels to find work, he made audiences laugh while tackling the thorny subject of gender inequality in entertainment. The obsessive immersion pushed Hoffman to admit it was the first time he truly understood the injustices women endure. The film earned 10 Oscar nominations, including another Best Actor nod for Hoffman. But the production was fraught with tension. He constantly clashed with director Sidney Pollack, debating script changes and character nuances. Pollack eventually chose to speak to Hoffman only when he was dressed as Dorothy, because then he was more cooperative. Genius comes at a price, people said of Hoffman after Tootsie. 3 years later, Hoffman endured a grueling trial with the TV adaptation of Arthur Miller's classic Death of a Salesman. As Willie Loman, the broken salesman crushed by the American dream, Hoffman lived as the character even off-set, immersing himself so deeply he was hospitalized from exhaustion. The result was a harrowing performance, hailed as one of the most vivid tragedies ever seen on television. Hoffman received an Emmy and a Golden Globe for Best Actor, adding another pinnacle outside cinema. Not every choice was successful. Ishtar, 1987, an adventure comedy with Warren Beatty, became a notorious box office disaster, often cited as one of the 1980s biggest flops. Yet even this rare failure reflected Hoffman's boldness, his willingness to step outside his comfort zone into genres few expected. And just a year later, he delivered one of his most iconic performances. Rain Man, 1988, brought Hoffman to his second career summit. As Raymond Babbitt, an autistic savant, he spent months studying the condition, meeting Kim Peek, the real-life inspiration, and maintaining Raymond's mannerisms for 12 weeks straight, even off-set. From hand gestures to the distant gaze, Hoffman built a performance that was both authentic and respectful, offering audiences their first deep encounter with the autistic world. The film won 4 Oscars, including Hoffman's second Best Actor statuette, cementing his unshakable place in cinema history. By the 1990s, Hoffman was no longer the face of youthful uncertainty, but a master of transformation. He became Captain Hook in Hook, 1991, a villain both terrifying and funny, an opportunist in Hero, 1992, a military doctor fighting an epidemic and outbreak, 1995, and a tormented alcoholic lawyer in Sleepers, 1996. Notably in Wag the Dog, 1997, he played a Hollywood producer who fabricates a war to cover a political scandal. Released just before the Clinton-Lewinsky affair, the film felt eerily prophetic about media manipulation. Hoffman earned yet another Best Actor nomination, proof that even in middle age, he could still capture the pulse of his era. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw Hoffman span genres: sci-fi in Sphere, 1998, historical drama in The Messenger, 1999, family tragedy in Moonlight Mile, 2002, courtroom thriller in Runaway Jury, 2003, and whimsical charm in Finding Neverland, 2004. He revealed quirky humor in I Heart Huckabees, 2004. This period reaffirmed his magnetism across everything from drama to philosophical comedy. A special highlight was his work in family films and animation, connecting with a new generation of viewers. In Meet the Fockers, 2004, and Little Fockers, 2010, he played eccentric father Bernie Focker, bringing in hundreds of millions at the box office. Meanwhile, he voiced Master Shifu in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, 2008, 2011, 2016, 2024, becoming a beloved voice for millions of children worldwide and proving the enduring vitality of his craft. Not content with acting alone, Hoffman ventured into directing. Quartet, 2012, a gentle story about retired musicians, was praised for its sensitivity and humanity, showing his storytelling ability from behind the camera. He also returned to television with Luck, HBO, 2011 to 2012, though the show was canceled amid concerns for horse safety, another reminder of the unpredictability in his career. As he entered his twilight years, Hoffman no longer pursued loud box office-driven roles. Instead, He gravitated toward reflective scripts, as though each character was a mirror of his own late-life reflections. In the Meyerowitz stories, 2017, he played Harold, a bitter, aging artist obsessed with legacy. The role unnervingly mirrored Hoffman himself, a father haunted by his career, facing wounded children, and the question of what a true legacy means. 2 years later, in Into the Labyrinth, 2019, he took on the role of a weary psychologist investigating a kidnapping. His tired gaze carried doubt and fatigue, as if age itself weighed into the performance. He no longer needed to prove anything. His presence alone conjured atmosphere. In As They Made Us, 2022, Hoffman broke hearts once more as a dying father in a fractured family. His trembling body, labored breaths, and acceptance of death brought many viewers to tears. It felt painfully real, as if Hoffman had poured his own fear of illness and mortality onto the screen. That same year, he appeared with Sissy Spacek in Sam and Kate, a tender, late-life romance, shadowed by the darkness of memory. Gone was the glitter of stardom. Hoffman now appeared as an ordinary old man, seeking simple connection amid loss. These roles may not have thrust him back into Hollywood's brightest lights, but each appearance left a lasting impression. He no longer acted to prove himself. He told stories of aging, family, and life's fragility. And in doing so, Hoffman affirmed the principle that guided his entire career: to seek truth in art, even after the spotlight has faded. Turmoil and Shadows. For decades, Dustin Hoffman was seen as the embodiment of devotion to acting. From Kramer vs. Kramer to Rain Man, he became the face of truthful performance, a star willing to stay awake for days or drive himself to exhaustion in order to inhabit a role. Yet just when his brilliance seemed unshakable, a dark chapter emerged, forcing the public to see their idol in an entirely different light. When the Me Too movement erupted, Hollywood witnessed a wave of powerful figures being exposed. Among them, Dustin Hoffman's name was one of the most shocking, precisely because he had long been regarded as a master, a legend. The first to come forward was Anna Graham Hunter, who at 17 had worked as a production assistant on the set of Death of a Salesman, 1985. She described Hoffman's inappropriate comments and actions, calling the experience a youthful scar that never fades. That broke the wall of silence. Catherine Rosetter, his co-star in the 1983 Broadway production of Death of a Salesman, recounted how Hoffman repeatedly groped her backstage during performances, a humiliation that haunted her for life. More accusations followed. Corey Thomas alleged that Hoffman exposed himself and made unwanted advances in a hotel. An anonymous woman known only as Pauline recalled her own encounter when she was just 15. Each testimony cut deeper into the once revered image of the dedicated artist. Confronted with these accusations, Hoffman issued a half-hearted response. He apologized if his actions had ever made anyone uncomfortable, while attributing it to cultural differences of the time. The defense was poorly received, fueling even more outrage. Many felt he was evading responsibility instead of facing it directly. The breaking point came in December 2017 at the 20th anniversary screening of Wag the Dog, when journalist and comedian John Oliver openly pressed him on the allegations. Hoffman grew defensive, denying sharply and turning the event into a heated public argument. The video spread rapidly, becoming proof to many that Hoffman failed to grasp the gravity of the accusations. Instead of easing tensions, the exchange only further tarnished his reputation. Hoffman was never criminally prosecuted, a fact that fueled criticism that Hollywood continued to protect its own. Yet the harshest judgment didn't come from the courts, but from public opinion and his artistic legacy. The Oscars, the iconic performances, could no longer be separated from the accusations. Once hailed as the actor who redefined the Hollywood leading man, Hoffman was now branded as a symbol of power abused in silence. For many, this fall was especially painful because it raised the eternal question: can we separate the art from the artist? His unforgettable performances, from Benjamin Braddock to Raymond Babbitt, remain, but they are now shadowed by anger and disappointment. Hoffman's life, once celebrated as proof of talent and perseverance, has instead become a cautionary tale. Fame can collapse in a single moment when truth comes to light. His legacy is no longer one of pure admiration, but a complex portrait, a genius of acting, yet forever marked by a stain that cannot be erased from Hollywood's history. Personal life. As the dazzling success of The Graduate began to lift Dustin Hoffman out of the cycle of minor supporting roles, his private life also reached a turning point. In 1969, at a small gathering of New York artists, Hoffman met Ann Byrne, a budding Broadway actress still searching for her place on stage. Anne, slightly more experienced, divorced, and the mother of a young daughter, Karina, carried a calm maturity and gift for listening that drew in Hoffman, who at the time was still weighed down by the insecurities of a troubled childhood and years of rejection for being too ordinary looking. Their romance unfolded quickly, as if Anne were the emotional anchor Hoffman had long been yearning for. They married in 1969, the very year Hoffman's fame exploded, a union that felt both intimate and fateful. Hoffman officially adopted Karina as his daughter, and in 1970 the family welcomed Jenna, his first biological child. To friends, the Hoffman-Byrne household seemed harmonious, a gifted actor husband consumed by his rising career, and a wife quietly holding the family together, raising 2 children. In reality, the rapid ascent of Hoffman's career created a widening gap. From the late 1970s onward, he committed to projects that demanded an extreme intensity of work. He was often absent from home, consumed by his method acting, to the point of carrying its tensions back into the household. Anne, long accustomed to playing the supporting role, grew weary, forced to raise the children while enduring a husband who was increasingly distant and emotionally unstable. Conflicts surfaced. Hoffman later admitted to being unfaithful during this marriage, using affairs as an escape from the pressures of family and career. For Anne, it was a quiet but lasting pain, as she realized she was losing her central place in the life of the man she once trusted. By the late 1970s, just as Kramer versus Kramer made Hoffman an emblem of modern cinema, his marriage was already on the brink of collapse. In 1980, after more than a decade together, Anne and Dustin officially divorced. The settlement was striking. Anne received about $4.5 million, a considerable sum at the time, reflecting the level of success Hoffman had achieved through his roles. For him, it was a price paid not only in money, but in the loss of love and family. Despite the separation, Hoffman remained deeply connected to Karina, the stepdaughter he had adopted, treating her as inseparable from his own blood. The first marriage ended with lingering wounds, a woman who chose to leave to preserve her dignity, and a man who realized too late that he had sacrificed his home for career and personal failings. Yet this rupture also marked a turning point. opening the door for Hoffman to meet Lisa Gottsagen, the woman who would stand by his side for more than 4 decades to come. After the heartbreak and bitterness with Anne Byrne, Dustin Hoffman nearly lost faith that he would ever find a true home again. His first marriage had left behind fractures that seemed impossible to mend. The busyness, the betrayals, the sense of loss when his family collapsed at the very moment his career soared. Just as hope seemed gone, fate brought him to Lisa Gottsagen, a sharp-minded, calm lawyer who could see the man behind the Hollywood glow. Their story carries the weight of a strange anecdote. Lisa first met Hoffman at the age of 10 and innocently told her grandmother, "I'm going to marry him one day." A child's throwaway remark, but one that turned out to be a curious prophecy of destiny. More than 15 years later, they crossed paths again at a party. Hoffman was in his 40s, already a 2-time Oscar nominee, but scarred by a stormy divorce. Lisa was different, at the height of her legal career, mature, disciplined, and steady. Everything Hoffman lacked, yet longed for. That contrast sparked a unique attraction. In 1980, just months after finalizing his divorce from Anne Byrne, Hoffman married Lisa. This marriage was no longer an impulsive choice or fragile romance. With Lisa, Hoffman found a true companion, at once soulmate and anchor. They quickly built a large family with 4 children together: Jacob, Rebecca, Maxwell, and Alexandra. Unlike before, Hoffman now deliberately placed family above career. He even turned down a role in Ghostbusters, 1984, a project that would become a global phenomenon, because he did not want to be away from his wife and children. It was a clear testament to his new choice. Presence at home mattered as much as the silver screen. For more than 4 decades, their marriage was not always without challenges, but it gave Hoffman what he had never had before: stability. Lisa was not the kind of woman who thrived on walking red carpets beside her husband. She chose to remain in the background, quietly nurturing the family and creating the foundation that allowed Hoffman to pursue his art. Whenever he lost himself in demanding roles, drained by the intensity of Rain Man or Death of a Salesman, it was Lisa who pulled him back, reminding him there was still a home, children, and a quiet peace to hold on to. Lisa's presence also reshaped Hoffman's approach to fatherhood. In his first marriage, he had often been absent and detached. This time, he tried to make amends. He played piano for his children, brought them to film sets, and even let Jacob, his youngest son, appear briefly in Rain Man as a family keepsake. His children grew up familiar with Hollywood's lights, yet grounded in normalcy, thanks to Lisa's discipline and love, and a father who had learned from past mistakes. Then came new trials with age. In 2013, Hoffman was diagnosed with cancer. It was a devastating shock, but once again, Lisa proved to be his irreplaceable pillar. She stood by him through surgery and recovery, helping him keep his spirits alive. To close friends, Hoffman and Lisa embodied one of Hollywood's rare, enduring loves. Not glamorous, not noisy, but quietly weathering scandal, illness, and the harsh gaze of the public. If Hoffman's first marriage with Anne Byrne ended in collapse and bitterness, his second with Lisa Gottsagen opened a new chapter, one where he found forgiveness, balance, and a true home. It was Lisa, through her patience and unwavering love, who preserved Hoffman's humanity, even when his reputation was scarred by Me Too allegations. Through every storm, from fame to disgrace, the family endured as his final anchor, keeping him from being swept away entirely by the tides of life. Social engagement. Dustin Hoffman left his mark not only on the screen, but also as a strong social voice. As early as the 1960s and 70s, while his career was on the rise, he publicly opposed the Vietnam War, risking exclusion from major projects. Hoffman joined protests, signed petitions, and used his fame to denounce violence. His belief in transparency and the role of journalism was also powerfully reflected in All the President's Men, 1976, where he portrayed Carl Bernstein, the reporter who helped expose Watergate. The role was not only an artistic triumph, but also a mirror of Hoffman's alignment with the ideal of holding power accountable. From the late 1980s, he expanded his activism to environmental issues. Hoffman became the narrator of the documentary series Race to Save the Planet, one of the earliest projects to address climate crisis, deforestation, and ocean pollution. His voice lent urgency to the message of protecting the planet, reminding the public that this was not just a matter of science, but of shared human responsibility. In the years that followed, Hoffman reaffirmed his stance on equality. He openly supported women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and spoke out against all forms of discrimination. His presence at the Women's March in 2017 alongside his granddaughter became a symbol of generational solidarity in the fight for justice. Yet here, a cruel paradox emerged. Hoffman had stood for equality and against oppression, but that very legacy was deeply undermined by sexual harassment allegations that surfaced in the same year. The stark contrast between his public ideals and the behavior he was accused of in private made his image profoundly complicated, raising the question, can an artist be both a voice for justice and a figure shadowed by his own misconduct? For Hoffman, that question remains unresolved, leaving his social legacy forever marked by duality, committed yet conflicted. Legacy and influence. Dustin Hoffman's legacy lies in the way he forever changed how audiences and filmmakers perceived a leading man in Hollywood. Before Hoffman appeared in The Graduate, 1967, leading roles were typically tied to tall, handsome figures exuding confidence in the mold of Paul Newman or Robert Redford. Hoffman, with his short stature, ordinary face, and natural awkwardness, upended that standard. He proved that an actor didn't need glamour to carry a film and move audiences, so long as he brought authenticity and emotional depth. That turning point opened the door for an entire new generation: Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, who would go on to dominate 1970s cinema. The acting style Hoffman pursued, method acting, also helped redefine immersion. He dared to push his body and mind to the limit, from staying awake for days during Marathon Man to living as an autistic man for 12 weeks while filming Rain Man. His total dedication made him both admired and criticized, but its impact was undeniable. He set a new standard for the level of truth an actor could reach. That influence spread far beyond the films themselves. Hoffman's characters, Benjamin Braddock, Ratso Rizzo, Ted Kramer, Dorothy Michaels, Raymond Babbitt, became cultural touchstones, each addressing vital social issues: the crises of youth, the plight of outsiders, the collapse of families, gender inequality, and awareness of autism. Each role was more than an artistic challenge. It contributed to expanding public understanding. Rain Man, in particular, shifted how society perceived and cared about autistic individuals, marking an impact that transcended cinema. His legacy also resides in his versatility. From drama, tragedy, and comedy to animation and television, Hoffman never confined himself to one mold, always willing to experiment. This breadth allowed his career to span more than half a century while remaining vibrant and relevant. Even in his work as a director with Quartet, Hoffman displayed sensitivity and humanity, proving he was not only a master actor, but also a consummate storyteller. Yet that legacy is no longer intact. The sexual harassment allegations that surfaced during the Talk Me Too movement in 2017 forced the public to reevaluate him in a different light. The image of an artist devoted to justice suddenly collided with personal accusations, leaving his legacy complicated, towering in artistry yet stained in morality. And this very contradiction has made Hoffman a multifaceted symbol, a legend inseparable from both his talent and his shadows. Today, Dustin Hoffman is still recognized as one of the most important actors of the 20th century. He not only transformed how Hollywood cast its leading men, but also left behind a gallery of characters with rare emotional weight. His legacy, though complex and controversial, underscores a simple truth. Great acting does not lie in appearances, but in the ability to capture human truth. And in that, Hoffman succeeded, in a way that can never be erased from the history of cinema. Present life. In his 80s, Dustin Hoffman is no longer the face-dominating movie posters or glittering red carpets. He has chosen a slower, quieter rhythm of life, yet he still maintains a connection to the art that has sustained him for a lifetime. On the streets of New York, he's sometimes spotted as the elderly man with a silver beard, a hoodie, and dark glasses, walking with his wife or grandchildren. For those who once knew Hoffman in a sharp suit, striding through flashing cameras, the contrast is striking. It leaves audiences with a pang of melancholy, a one-time legend now blending into the ordinary crowd. Still, Hoffman has never declared retirement. On the contrary, he continues to appear selectively in special projects. In 2024, he drew attention by returning to the red carpet with his family for the premiere of Kung Fu Panda 4, once again voicing Master Shifu, a role he has embodied for nearly 2 decades. The sight of him holding his grandchildren's hands, smiling alongside Lisa Gottsagen, reminded the public that in his later years, family had taken precedence over everything else. That same year, he also appeared in Francis Ford Coppola's ambitious Megalopolis, a supporting role but symbolically significant, marking the presence of a screen icon in a grand cinematic experiment. In parallel, he took on independent films like Tuner and Luca Mortis, proving that his passion for the craft still burns, though no longer with the weight of carrying an entire film on his shoulders. In daily life, Hoffman spends most of his time with his wife and children. Lisa, his partner for more than 40 years, has become a quiet harbor amid the storms and scandals. After undergoing cancer surgery in 2013, Hoffman has cherished each healthy day more deeply. He enjoys sitting at the piano in his living room, which he calls a return to the unfinished dream of his youth, or sharing his acting experiences with younger generations in small workshops. His joys now come from simplicity: family meals, conversations with old friends like Gene Hackman or Robert Duvall, and occasional appearances at events supporting art, the environment, and equality. Today, Hoffman evokes mixed feelings in audiences: sorrow that the stains of his past can never be erased, yet admiration for the resilience of an artist still chasing truth on screen even as age dims his brilliance. If in youth his stardom redefined what a Hollywood leading man could be, his present life stands as a reminder of fame's fragility. Every legend eventually fades into shadow, leaving only the performances behind. Dustin Hoffman closes his public life, not with the thunder of applause, but with a silence heavy with contradictions. He once redefined the idea of a movie star, a man who needed no perfect looks to become an icon, only an uncompromising honesty in performance. Yet he has also been forced to face the darkness of his own making, as harassment allegations shook his reputation. At this intersection, Hoffman's image becomes that of a complex mirror: genius and flaw, commitment and paradox, glory and stain. Perhaps the greatest value Hoffman leaves behind is not his 2 Oscars or his gallery of unforgettable roles, but the painful question his life raises. How should we remember an artist? By the talent they gave the world, or by the fractures they left behind? There is no single answer, but it ensures that his legacy will be remembered more deeply than any simple praise. And whether at his height or at his lowest, Hoffman always sought truth in art. He may never have achieved completeness in his private life, but on screen, he gave audiences moments of such authenticity that they were left breathless. That is the beautiful yet haunting legacy of an imperfect legend. And you? Do you choose to remember Dustin Hoffman as the artist who reshaped cinema, or as the icon who tarnished his own name? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay with us for more stories behind Hollywood Spotlight.